Back, friends and family. We're talking about situational communication. Last week we discussed our different social circles. Now I want to think about how we alter the way we communicate based on the people we're communicating with and our environments and the situation. We do change the way we communicate, at least in certain ways, and that's okay. It's appropriate at different times. You probably talk to your grandmother a little differently than you talk to your best friends when you're just with your friends. That's good. You probably should adjust in some ways. You probably talk to your parents a little differently than you do with your friends. You also probably adjust based on social situation. If you're coming into a new social situation, if you're meeting people for the first time, you probably communicate a little differently than you do with someone you've known for years, that you've grown up with. If you're in the classroom, you might behave a little differently than you do when you're at home. All of those things are okay. And in fact, situational communication can be a very important skill. If I'm going to talk, even in little ways, subtle adjustments, if I'm going to talk to my class, all of you who I work with a lot, and most of you I've known for a long time, and I get to work with you over the course of many years, I'm going to communicate in our classroom setting a little differently than I would if I'm speaking at, let's say, a funeral or a wedding, something that's more formal. Now, there's certain things that I always do that are part of just the way I communicate, the way I talk, but we do adjust for the setting a little bit. That's a great skill to learn. You don't want to show up at your first job interview and talk the exact same way you do with your buddy when you're hanging out. It's probably not the right vibe. It's not the right energy you want to be giving. What we really need to think of, though, is how do we use that as a skill, that situational communication, without changing who we are, without giving up those parts of us that are essential to who we are, without changing our values, without changing the things we really care about. That can be a problem. We do that sometimes when we want to fit in with a certain social group. We want to be accepted. Everyone wants acceptance. But sometimes we make the mistake of going with the crowd a little too much, not standing up for our own beliefs because, well, if I do that, it might get me ostracized. It might separate me from the group. It might draw unwanted attention onto me. So sometimes we feel it's better to just go with the flow. Just let the current take us. That can be dangerous. That can be something that leads to possible negative impacts of different groups. If the people in our social circles aren't looking out for our best interests and aren't elevating us, then that's a really dangerous thing. So that's really the question this week. I want you to think of how you interact differently in different social situations, how your communication changes. Then I want you to examine if there's certain situations where your communication is changing in a way that might not be beneficial, in a way that's maybe covering up how you really feel about something, or not allowing you to express yourself in a healthy way. And then I want you to think about how we can effectively communicate and adjust our communication to different like situations, social situations, but still be true to our values and even our own styles. That's something we've talked about a little bit, communication style. If you find certain things that work for you, how can you do those things in more formal and less formal situations, for instance? Think about that this week. Much love.